Fig orchards, you said?
Friendswood was noted for its fig orchards.
Okay.
And it was in the early 1930s in the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And many people came from areas to pick figs and work in the fig plants. And Cecil Brown had a fig plant, and a man named Carpenter had a fig plant.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another one, I don't remember who owned it, nor am I sure of the location, but that's how my mother and Daddy met.
They met like in the fig orchards, you're saying?
Yes, Daddy came to work, and Mother's family lived here in Friendswood,
Mm-hmm.
and of course she was working. I don't know how much she picked figs, but she worked in the fig plants.
Mm-hmm.
And they peeled and stemmed the figs. And then after they were cooked, they bottled them.
Mm-hmm. And what would they sell? Like what kind of products were they making with the figs?
Oh, like a preserve.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, like a jam
Yeah.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Mother worked for many years at the plant. Later just running the capping machine.
Yeah.
Not peeling or working, placing them in the jars.
Mm-hmm.
She ran the capping machine. But while we were quite young, my cousin and I'm referring to my mother's twin sister's son,
Mm-hmm.
more like a brother than a cousin, but Mother and I had a little trailer jammed right up against the fig plant.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn Morris was in there. We were allowed to go in where the people were working.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to messing with something, some of the machinery or something. Cut his hand real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so my aunt, who worked there too, ran out to our little trailer to get something white to wrap around it for them to take him to the doctor. Because you always put something white, not color.
So you can see how much blood is?
No, because a white wouldn't contaminate the injury and color.
Oh, because the dyes can get like...
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So she grabbed my blouse to my Shirley Temple dress. I've never forgotten that. I never got it back.
I bet you wouldn't want it back.
No, I wouldn't want it back. But that's one of the memories.
So you said your dad moved down to Friendswood for the figs?
Yeah, he was.
Where did he move from?
He was a farm boy outside of Temple.
Outside of Temple. Okay, so that's where like the Olivers relate with that.
Yes.
Okay.
The Olivers were located in the Temple area.
Okay.
A little town named, what was it? Oh, I can't think. But anyway, that's how they met. He came to work in the fig orchard.
Now, how old was he at that point?
He was probably 20.
20? Okay.
And Mother was 16. And when Mother and Aunt Ellen were probably 14, their daddy took them in to Cecil Brown and said, "Would you put the girls to work peeling figs?"
Mm-hmm.
And Cecil said, "I don't hire babies." So Papa took them down to Carpenter's plant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he hired them.
He was just fine with babies.
Yeah. And they were so competitive against each other that they were the best
Wow.
peelers in the whole building. Well, Cecil heard about that. So he asked Papa to bring them on back down
Changed his mind?
to his place.
Did they end up going, or did they stay at
Oh,
Carpenter's?
they came back to Cecil's and stayed for years.
Yeah.
And like I say, they'd peel figs, and then after they cook them in these big vats right there in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
then they'd put them in like big dish pans
Mm-hmm.
and bring them to a counter, and they would put them in the bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And his label part of the time was take a taste.
Take a taste?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And I always went to my daddy's parents for the summer as soon as school was out.
Yeah.
And so one time I was talking about how you were supposed to pack the figs, and my friend Melody Calgary Brown said, "I don't know how you'd know. You always left town. You never had to work like we did."
Where would you go?
Temple.
Okay, so just visiting family?
Oh, yeah. I stayed with the Olivers all summer long.
Mm-hmm.
And, but,
What was that like up in Temple?
in Temple,
Mm-hmm.
well, all the boys worked in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have to.
That's what I've been told. Did they call you princess or something like that?
No, I can't remember what they called me.
They didn't think too highly of them having to work while you got to stay inside,
Right.
though.
And a lot of times, I'd wake up to find my arm tied to the bedpost or my big toe
Mm-hmm.
or something, because they'd be so resentful that I was getting to stay in bed and sleep while they had to go off to work.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, but I loved being up in Temple
Yeah.
with my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Papa was a bear, though. He was a big, tall man, 6'2", weighed quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but he talked gruff.
Rough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember one time after, of course, all of her children were grown except Jeff and Billy Joe, who were just above me. And Papa was yelling at Grandma about something, hurt her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Daddy's brother next to him, Uncle Buddy, went over to her at the counter and said, "Mama, do you want to come live with me?" And she said, "No, son, I'm going to stay here with your Papa." So, anyway, he never changed.
Yeah.
He was gruff all of his life.
Sounds pretty typical of the times, though.
Yeah.
It's about
But
right.
one thing he liked to do was play domino.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Like bones, or you play like 42?
No,
Just straight dominoes?
dominoes.
Just straight dominoes.
Uh-huh. And so every Saturday, he'd get out of his overalls, put on his khaki shirt and khaki pants. He and Grandma would go to town. And Grandma would buy groceries and go to the Woolworth store and visit with a couple of the clerks that were relatives and other people she knew. And Papa went straight to the domino hall. And she'd have to go back to the car and wait till he got through playing
Really?
dominoes.
So groceries are just waiting in the car while he's finishing up until he has his time?
That's right. But of course, there wasn't any milk to worry about.
Oh, that's true.
Because they had milk at home.
Yeah.
But in 1947, Texas City explosion.
Yeah.
And they had 5 children living in Texas City. I believe it was 5. Daddy and Uncle Buddy and Aunt Bertie and Aunt Lee and Dale, who had been born a twin, but he'd lost his little twin sister at 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Dale was working at Monsanto and had just gotten off work and was headed out of the plant when the explosion happened and struck him across the lower part of the face and killed him.
Oh, man.
And on the radio, it said L.A. Oliver was among the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence Adele was his name, but I didn't pick up on it because I just thought of him as Dale.
Yeah.
But it also said W.N. Oliver, which was my daddy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, for a little bit, Daddy had been killed too. And my aunt and uncle and my friend Melda Lee and her mother, we went over to Texas City to see if we could locate Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they were guarding everybody that entered, like, but they let us go in. And I went to Daddy's house and no one was there. And I went to Aunt Bertie's house and no one was there. Went to Aunt Lee's house and no one was there.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Uncle Buddy's house and no one was there. But at Uncle Buddy's house, a big piece of steel had come through the roof and lodged in the kitchen floor.
Like, how big are you talking?
Oh, I'm talking about the size of this table.
Wow. That's from the explosion, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, we couldn't find anyone, so we came back to Friendswood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a message from someone that I was supposed to call. We didn't have a phone out at the farm in Temple, but I was to call somebody in Troy,
mm-hmm.
and they would give me information. So I stopped at our little shotgun
Mm-hmm.
telephone office and was going to make this call. Well, there was a strike on and they wouldn't put the call through. So Julia Stout was the local operator at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you never heard such blue language. She got on that phone and she ripped them up one side and down another. They put
What for?
They put my call through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was told that Daddy was okay,
Mm-hmm.
that Dale had been killed, and I was to get on a bus and come to Temple.
And how old were you at this point?
14.
14. Okay, yeah, that's right, because it's 1947.
And
when did your... Sorry to interrupt.
I must have been 15.
Must have been... Okay.
And so I was going with a boy at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and his parents didn't want me to ride the bus at night by myself.
Yeah.
So they sent him with me. And we arrived in Temple, called his number in Troy, and they got someone out to come pick us up at the bus station. Well, while we were up there in Temple, we had Dale's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
His little face was wrapped in gauze on the lower half during the service. But anyway, Papa was out working with some cows in the cow lot, and he called me to come in there and help him. So I went in the cow lot, and he said, if this calf runs in that shed, shut the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So it ran in there, and I shut the gate, and I turned around, and the mama cow was looking at me. And she was not happy. Well, it didn't take me 3 giant steps, and I sailed over that fence like the best high jumper in the state. And this friend that was up there with me is still living today, and he still remembers it.
I bet you had no idea you could move like that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Wow. So this is up in Temple?
Yeah. So, anyway, now where do we go?
Well, you went up to Temple, so this was 1947, so go from there.
Yeah. Well, I was back in Friendswood. Let's go back to 5th grade.
5th grade. So what year would that have been?
Well, I probably started school in what, 38?
Yeah, that sounds about right, because you're born in 32, so yeah, 38.
38, 39, 40, 41, 42.
42. Okay, so
Maybe.
this is going back a couple years. Okay.
Yeah. And what was I going to tell you
Something about 5th grade. What happened in
Well,
5th grade?
2 things. One thing was that this boy wrote me this note, and of course I didn't like him at all.
Oh, of course. It's never the ones you like.
And he had failed school a couple of years, so he's really too old to be in there with us. But anyway, when we went out to recess, I kicked him in the seat of the britches.
Whoa.
Well, he went and told on me. It was the wrong thing for him to do, because the teacher called me in and wanted to know, did I kick him? And I said, yes, ma'am, I did. And she said, why did you do that? And I said, well, he wrote me this note, and I didn't like it. And she said, well, what did the note say? And I said, it said he wanted to rope me.
Rope you?
Yes. she said, "May I see that note if you still have it?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I have it." So I gave it to her. So in a little while, I see the superintendent driving off with that kid in the car. And he never came back to school because, of course, that word wasn't rope.
Okay, I see. So, wow.
And so they took care of things in those days.
So you never saw the kid again. So
I
you don't.
never saw him.
So they may have taken him out back and shot him or something.
He lived between Friendswood and Alvin.
Okay.
So he was on the edge of school district anyway. But
Okay, so now where would this school have been? Like, can you place it for me? Like, where would it be in today's world?
it's still located,
It's still located. Where is it at?
you know, where the Friends Church is.
Just down the street.
Just down that on the other side of 518 down there on the right.
Okay, so it's still standing there. Okay.
Yeah. And so we had a good time in school, really.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade my school years.
Okay, so when did your parents separate? What year was that?
I was 5 years old.
5 years old, so 37?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I'm guessing that you lived with your mom.
I did. And my mom moved home with my grandpa and grandma.
And they lived in Friendswood as well?
They lived between Friendswood and Pearland.
Okay.
But I started school in Pearland.
Really?
Mostly because the bus came from Pearland and Friendswood didn't have a bus.
Yeah.
But I was really in Pearland District when I first started living with Grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
Grandma and Papa. And I remember, I guess, second, third grade, we had to walk almost a mile to get to the bus. And we got off the bus one afternoon. It was warm and we were tired. My uncle was a senior, and we asked him if we could hang on to his back pockets. I guess we thought it'd propel us along. And of course he said absolutely not. He was most untouchable. And so we decided to sit down in the middle of the road, and she'd drink a bottle of ink and I'd eat a bottle of paste. We'd show them.
So did you do it?
We did it. And we got on home later, and then she got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And when she vomited up blue, that like scared the family to death, so they rushed her off madly to Pearland to the visiting doctor.
Yeah.
There wasn't a doctor there all the time. And my status never changed.
Didn't affect you whatsoever. You had bowels of steel.
And so, anyway, that was part of my experience going to Pearland School.
So when did you start going to Friendswood?
I was in 5th grade.
Okay, so that's when you move over and the boy wanted to rope you.
Yes. Well, actually, before I went to Friendswood School, my mother and aunt moved up out of Ryan in a little country community and moved into her husband's home place.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to school at this little country school in my 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the year they skipped everybody a grade because they added 12 years.
Okay.
They only had 11 years prior to that. But I thought they skipped me up because I was so smart.
Well, you can keep telling yourself that. I won't tell anybody.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think I was the only fifth grader, and that put me in the room with the sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. And it was my most learning experience in school
Wow.
because I finished my work and listened to everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only there about 5 months or so. And Uncle John worked at A&M night watchman,
Mm-hmm.
and he would raid the refrigerators sometime and bring goodies out to us, which was a real treat.
What kind of goodies would he bring you?
Oh, some desserts.
Can you remember any specifically?
I can't remember what they were called. They're rolls, 2 little rolls. Anyway, and he came out one day and told Mama and Aunt Mabel they needed to go back to Friendswood and get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mother was cleaning her fingernails with the fingernail file. Her fingers were just trembling because he was so gruff. And so they wrote my Aunt Ellen and her husband, Bernard Grimes, to come and get them. So we all piled in their car and came back to Friendswood. And then I started Friendswood School.
Okay.
And had some wonderful teachers.
Who was your favorite?
Miss Dorsey.
Now, why was she your favorite?
Well, she was an excellent teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She had a good sense of humor. She seemed to love us.
Really? And what grade was this that you had, Miss Dorsey?
5th.
5th? Okay. Did she just teach 5th grade, or did she teach other grades as well?
There were 2 grades in that classroom. And Robert, my husband, and his sister, and his best friend, Preacher Butler, and his sister, Barbara, all 4 of them came over to Friendswood School at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all in the same grade because the boys had failed a couple of years.
Yeah.
So they were in, I think, 7th grade, and we were in 8th grade, or 6th grade and 7th grade.
Yeah.
I guess it was 6th and 7th.
So you were in the 6th?
I was in 7th.
Oh, you're in 7th?
Robert was in 6th because he'd failed.
Okay.
And he tells the teacher, we have a new calf at our house.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, that's wonderful, Robert. And he said, yes, but we had to have the veterinarian come out. So that calf was trying to come out the wrong way. And that vet rammed his hand and arm up her rear end and turned that calf around. And he was born doing fine. Doing fine, both calf and mother. And we all were just stunned, just quiet as a mouse. And Miss Dorsey would have killed one of those boys if they'd laughed. I guarantee you. But that was Robert Paul. So, anyway, I liked him, and he liked the high school girls.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the only boy I ever wrote a note to. All the girls and boys were writing notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote Robert one.
And was this in 7th grade?
Yes.
Okay.
And I said, Dear Robert, I've tried not to like you, but I do. Huberta.
That's very straight and to the point. I like it. It's a very forward approach, but that it seems like it panned out for you. So.
And then it rained that day, so we all had to stay in the gym instead of going outside. And he would go over and lean against the wall and take that note out of his pocket and read, Dear Robbie. And I would just die. I was so afraid he was going to read it. But then he'd fold it up and put it back in his pocket. In a little bit, he'd go over the other side of the gym, lean against the wall, and take that, Dear Robbie. He had a good time teasing me with that. So, anyway, we moved on up into our high school years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think if I was a freshman. This year of the Texas City explosion.
Well, you said that was 47, so you were about 15. 14 or 15.
I was just 14 when the explosion happened, and
Okay.
then I turned 15. But I already told you about them taking me over to Texas City to look for Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
do you remember anything about World War II when that was going on?
yes, because I had my mother's baby brother go into the Navy, and two of Daddy's brothers, Uncle Ben and Uncle Mike, went into the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale tried really hard to get in the service, but because he'd had surgery on his feet when he was a baby, young,
Mm-hmm.
he was older, 6 or 7, when 7, I guess, or maybe older. Because I remember him being in the hospital in Galveston. They didn't have air conditioning, and they rolled him up to the window, and he waved to me as I stood out on the grounds. So, at any rate, that his feet were too bad. He couldn't get in the service.
Mm-hmm. Were you directly, can you remember anything that directly affected you while the war was going on? Like my great grandma, she told us about the biggest thing that she remembered about it was the rations.
Oh yeah, we had rationing, sugar,
mm-hmm.
particularly.
Yeah,
and I think flour too. But oh yeah, they were very, very close and careful with their use of all those.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're in high school. What can you tell me about your high school years?
Well, I loved my high school years, but what can I tell you about them? My junior year, I decided to go live at Temple with Grandma and Papa
Mm-hmm.
and go to Troy
Mm-hmm.
High School, where Billy Joe and
Yeah.
Jeff and Dale had all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And I was always honored that I was just there the 1 year, my junior year. And I missed getting high school favorite by 6 points, 6 votes.
In Friendswood or in Troy?
Troy. And I did get junior favorite.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So I was liked and I liked everybody.
Now, what prompted you to move up there?
Well, uh, there were reasons, but
Okay.
at any rate, I was accustomed to living with Papa and Grandma. So,
That makes sense.
and then I went back up there to go to junior college.
Now, was this with the year that you spent with your cousin?
No,
No. Who was? I think was it Jeff?
Jeff is my uncle.
Uncle. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the age I got you.
And Jeff had been off into the service for 3 or 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
4, I guess. And he had gotten out of the service by the time I was ready to enter junior college.
Mm-hmm.
And he entered at the same time I did. And those were 2 wonderful years.
So you were up there for 2 years?
Uh-huh.
Now, was this a Temple Junior College?
Yes.
Now, what was so wonderful about these years? Can you tell me some specific stories?
We joined everything,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a 25th year anniversary, I think, and had a big parade. We all decorated the floats and everything. I rode on one of the floats, which was probably the least pretty one. I was so busy working on everybody else's. And, but anyway, I remember our sophomore year, Jeff came by the door of my classroom. He was trying to tell me something. I couldn't understand him. When I got out, he said, "You and I have both been voted favorites of the class."
This is your junior year, you said?
Sophomore
Sophomore? Okay.
at junior college.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. I just got my wires crossed.
Yeah. So, I didn't go on after my sophomore year. I would have.
Mm-hmm.
I loved school.
Yeah.
And, but no one mentioned it. I sure didn't ask.
So after you finished your sophomore year, did you just decide to come back, or were you told to come back?
Oh, no, I wasn't told to, but I just came home.
For no reason whatsoever? Just...
Well, I lived in Texas City with Daddy.
Yeah.
And my stepmother, Pauline.
Mm-hmm.
And went to work for Johnson. I can't remember. Concrete and gravel or something.
Mm-hmm.
And worked there through the summer, September and October, and I got married in November.
So obviously Robbie came back into the picture at some point in time. Where did he come back in?
Oh, he came back in while I was in junior college.
Okay, so is he why you came back?
No, because he was working in New Mexico. But whenever I was home from junior college,
Was this after your freshman year?
yeah, I was
Okay.
sophomore,
Okay.
and I was in the yard in my overalls playing with yo-yo,
Mm-hmm.
and he came driving by and slammed on the brakes and got out and came over and said, we knew each other, of course, from
Yeah.
years before, but he said, I'll be by to pick you up at 7 o'clock this evening. I said, well, I sort of already have a date. And he said, I said, I'll be by at 7 o'clock to pick you up this evening. So I was ready.
You didn't have to say it twice. It got you.
So that's when we started dating.
And so when was this?
That was after my freshman year.
Was that like in the summertime or?
Yes.
So what year would that have been?
Well, let's see. I graduated in 49.
So it
So
would have been
in
50?
the summer of 50.
Summer of 50.
And he took me back to Temple and met Papa and Grandma. And he went into town and he bought about, of course, his folks had money.
Mm-hmm.
He bought about 5 or 6 knives, pocket knives. And I came into the kitchen. He had them laid out in front of Papa to pick out which one he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was his gift, I guess, for having him as a guest.
Yeah.
So, Papa called him Bobby Socks.
Bobby socks.
I called him Robbie. I guess he picked up on Bobby Socks.
Now, why the socks? Just throwing it in there?
I don't know. No reason, because Robbie sure didn't wear Bobby Socks. Matter of fact, being in military school,
Mm-hmm.
he always wore those little garters around the upper part of his leg that hooked onto his high socks.
Okay.
And he wore those for a number of years after we were married.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's consistent.
Uh-huh. Well, get used to a way of life, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, we, when I got out of school my sophomore year, well, he asked me that summer
Mm-hmm.
if I would marry him.
So that was 1951. Whenever he asked you.
Yes. And he was, like I say, working in New Mexico, Alamogordo, New Mexico.
I know where that is, yeah.
And he was working on, his father laid a lot of the airstrips
Mm-hmm.
out there. And so we got married on November 29th, 1951, and went straight out to Alamogordo.
And did y'all get married here in Friendswood?
We got married in his parents' home, which was a long, white stucco, red tiled roof home that sat on a 10-acre tract.
I've heard you call it the most beautiful house you've ever seen.
Well, it was not, I've seen some prettier since, but up to that
Yeah,
time.
at that point, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was the most beautiful house on the mainland.
Mm-hmm.
And Ms. Mora belonged to the Garden Club in Houston. She was quite a gardener, and she had white bridal wreath growing along the long driveway,
Mm-hmm.
and azaleas, and it was quite a show place.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and his daddy had a plane and airstrip in the back pasture.
Wow.
Yeah.
Especially back in that day. I mean,
In
that's.
that day and age, right. He'd get up mornings and go out, put his robe on over his pajamas, get in that plane, fly down over Galveston and look at everything.
Just to do it?
Oh, yeah. And then come back and land, come in the house, put his swimsuit on, go dive in the pool. But he was a philanderer,
Yeah.
which was bad. But I loved him. He was really an outstanding person in many ways. One time, whenever we always went to Sunday lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they always had household help.
Yeah.
And when I was expecting my second child, Trina, I said, I guess when we get this second baby, we're going to need to stop coming every Sunday for lunch. And Daddy said, you get that second baby, we're going to meet you at the door.
Mm-hmm.
You get the third one, we're going to meet you at the car. And if you get a fourth one, we're going to meet you at the gate. Who could help love somebody like that?
No matter what you do, no matter how many kids you bring into this, we're going to meet you one way or the other.
That's right. That's right. So, anyway, when we were, like I say, in 7th and 8th grades, and I told you Robbie and his sister, Sylvia, and the preacher and his sister, Barbara. Robbie and preacher were best friends. They all four came friends from school at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was an invasion. But it worked out.
Yeah?
Yeah. But then they sent Robbie off to Peacock Military
Yeah.
School in San Antonio,
Mm-hmm.
and then to Valley Forge in Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. So we've gotten pretty much through high school at this point and through junior college. So y'all moved out to.
Alamogordo.
Now, do you want to talk about that, or do you want to focus more on your time in Friendswood?
We didn't stay in Alamogordo long. There was
Okay.
not much to tell except that we decided to go down and cross over into Juarez,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico,
Yeah.
to do some Christmas shopping. As we came back out, a snowstorm hit. I mean, that was very unexpected
Yeah.
for the area. And it just blanketed everything. You couldn't see where the road was or where the ditches were. It's just all a blanket of snow.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to spend the night, which we had planned on financially. But we made it back down Florida the next day. And then it wasn't too long, and we were going to move back home to, well, his folks lived between Friendswood and Lake City. They were considered Lake City people.
Yeah.
And Daddy had an old truck out there, and he was just going to abandon it. Well, Robbie thought he'd like to have it because he might want to go into business for himself. And
Mm-hmm.
that pickup and that truck would be a good start. We were driving pickup at the time. So everything we had, including the bed, and the mattress, and everything, and a refrigerator he had bought, and in the back of that pickup. And as we were driving across Texas, an ice storm came. I mean, a blizzard. And the truck Robbie was driving didn't have all his floorboards. He didn't have a jacket on. And he finally stopped and parked it
Mm-hmm.
about 10 miles out of this town and got in the truck with me. And he was shivering.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to the motel and we got in the bed and he was still shivering.
Mm-hmm.
I like to never got the poor thing warmed up. He was one cold person.
I bet.
And anyway, next day, of course, we had to drive back out and get the truck, and
Yeah.
I had to pull it. He had tried to drive it, but every time he stopped for a red light, it'd die and wouldn't start. And I'd have to back up in the intersection and hook on. I'm telling you, I was so fatigued when we got home.
I believe it.
Yes. And we hadn't been home a week, and Daddy said, "Son, I think I can use that truck." So he did.
Wow.
Oh,
Where were y'all living at this point?
there was a small house on the Morrill property. It was really built for the maid, and it was consisted of 2 rooms and a bath.
Mm-hmm.
And we were living in it for
Okay.
a short while. But Daddy had just built his new brick office out where the Gulf Freeway was going through at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he
Was
knew
it already made at that point, or were they constructing the Gulf Freeway?
they were just constructing it.
Okay, so what year was this?
Uh,
When y'all were living in that
the
house?
year we got married, 51.
51? Okay, so y'all really weren't in Alamogordo for very long.
No, probably 5 weeks, 4 weeks.
So y'all moved back just before the new year, or?
We came back for Christmas.
Okay.
And anyway, after we were living in that little house on their place, he moved his old office out of downtown Houston area onto a 10-acre spot that he owned that connected by one fence post to his other 200
Mm-hmm.
acres. And we moved into that,
Okay.
made that office our home. And he deeded it over to Robert. And we were there 4 years, 5 years. And Daddy had what they call financial reverses.
Mm-hmm.
And
He hit bankrupt.
Yes. And I don't think he ever declared bankruptcy.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for
Sure, sure. But anyway, Robbie sold 10 acres and gave the money to his daddy
Mm-hmm.
because he knew he needed it.
Yeah.
Well, we moved on over into Friendswood then.
So this would have been about 55, 56?
Let's see. The children were born 53 and 54. 54. It'd been 56 or 57.
56 or 57?
Uh-huh. And we lived in a house off of what's now called Quaker Street.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't at the time. It was just back in the woods. Robbie found out who owned it and rented it from her. And the garage was built just in to the front of the house a little ways and blocked any breeze that might have come across. It was the hottest place I've ever been in my life. Oh, so we lived there for a few months. The well went out. Robbie wouldn't pay the rent. She wouldn't fix the well till he paid the rent, and he wouldn't pay the rent till she fixed the well.
Yeah.
So he ran a hose over from Leon Brown's. And Leon supplied us water for about 3 or 4 months till we found a place to live. Friendswood didn't have any rent houses to speak of.
Yeah.
And we moved out along 2351 into Grandpa Baker's
And what year would this have been?
little house. Well, let's see. Trina was born in 54.
You said you moved to Friendswood to that house in about 56, 57.
Right. So it was probably 58.
58, okay.
And we moved into that house. I'm telling you, the living room was so small you could hardly get the sofa in there. And Brady was born while we were there. And then we moved over on the corner in another of Grandpa Baker's houses, which had a much larger living and eating area.
Mm-hmm.
But it still just had 2 bedrooms.
So I'm guessing y'all were in the smaller house for a very short period of time.
Oh,
About a year or so?
probably close to 3 years.
Really? Okay.
Maybe.
So about like 60, 61 is when y'all moved out?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Jenna was born in 66.
And were y'all living in the same house that Grandpa Baker?
Grandpa Baker's house on the corner had a big living room.
Where was this one at?
It was along 2350.
Okay, so just a different spot, okay.
Yeah, it was just up the road a little bit. So we lived there until we bought our house down on Coward Creek.
Coward Creek? Okay.
Yeah.
And what year was this that y'all bought that house?
Jana was 3.
So she was
69. Because I was over anxious about being right on the creek with a 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm. And that was the house that y'all lived in for most of your lives, right?
Until the flood.
When was the flood?
Chased us off. 77.
77? So, okay, y'all spent 8 years. Okay, so y'all didn't spend much. Okay. So where'd y'all move after in 77?
Well, we rented a house for about 6 months, and I cannot tell you where that house was. It wasn't in Friendswood proper. And then we bought an apartment.
Okay.
And Robbie hated that apartment. But uh, let's see if I'm telling it straight. Anyway, we moved into Polly Ranch.
Okay.
And
This in '77.
well,
Oh, y'all bounced around a little bit.
A
Okay.
little bit, but we moved onto McKissick and Polly Ranch. Oh, what year?
You said '77. So how long did y'all move to different places? Was that a year or two? Maybe 2 or 3 years?
Just 2 places.
But how long did y'all live at those 2 places?
Oh,
Are we talking months, a year?
we didn't live at that apartment too long.
I can't imagine, if Robbie doesn't like it, I can't imagine y'all staying there too long.
No, but I think we were, let's see. No, I'm telling it wrong. We lived in a house for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then we bought. Then we moved into Grandpa Baker's. And then we moved in the second house of Grandpa Baker's. And then we bought the house down on the creek.
Yeah.
And after the house flooded, we bought an apartment.
Which Robbie hated.
Which he hated. And then we moved into McKissick and Polly Ranch.
Okay, so this is like 79, 80?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it's Polly McKissick?
Polly Ranch.
Polly Ranch, okay, sorry. All right, so you're in the Polly Ranch house.
Yeah. Should have stayed there.
Why is that?
Because we both liked it.
Why'd you move then?
I don't really remember.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
Well, when did y'all move out of that house?
I don't know.
Did y'all live in the Polly Ranch house for very long, or was this?
Yeah, we lived there about 10 or 12 years.
Oh, okay, so y'all were there for a while. So this would have been probably around the 90s, like 90, 91.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Where'd y'all move after that?
And that's when we went into the apartment that Robbie hated.
Oh, okay, so it's after the Polly Ranch house.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Robbie died while we were in the apartment.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. We were fixing to buy a home.
Well, because that was in 2003, so you're talking about a 24-year difference. Because the Polly Ranch house, you said, was in about 79, 80. Is that right?
Well, Jan was born in 66.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to have been in the Polly Ranch house by 80.
Yeah, so, and you said you lived there for about 12 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so 90, 91, where did y'all move right after that?
That's when we moved into the apartment.
How long did y'all live in the apartment for?
Oh, I don't recall.
Well, I mean, if it was in 91, and that's...
When did Robbie die?
2003.
Oh.
So I'm guessing there's a chink in the timeline that you're...
Yeah, there
you're
is. There's
about.
something wrong.
It's okay. It's not that important. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to establish a
yeah.
timeline, but it's okay.
2003. Huh. Hmm. Well, we were living in that
Yeah.
apartment
No, I
when
believe
he
you.
died.
Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit and let's here.
And that's when Brady moved me over here.
Okay. I'm gonna do something